So The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Gerald. Scott F. Gerald? What's his name? F. Scott Gerald. F. Fitzgerald. F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's why it didn't sound right. Jeez. Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald. Yeah. A really short book. But the prose in it is so good. It's so well written. The diction and the prose is so it's not purple or flowery, but it's so good. It's so, I don't know. It's so succinct and concise because I mean this is a 150-page book, but it's really well written. I mean, I guess that's why it's a classic, and it was first published 100 years ago from next year, so maybe I should have waited till next year for like a 100-year anniversary. But wow. So it's written in the first person, which is cool. I think that lends itself well to the story. It's this guy, Nick Carraway, who's telling us about his sort of relationship slash just the times he met and spent with this guy, Jay Gatsby. Yeah, so Nick Carraway, he moved to this place in New York, this very wealthy place, but he's not a wealthy person. He got the place pretty cheap. He's just renting. But next to him is this massive mansion owned by this guy, Jay Gatsby, who no one really knows much about other than he's fabulously wealthy. There's lots of rumors spreading around about what he does, or like they're saying like, oh, maybe he killed a man. Ooh, maybe he's a bootlegger. Maybe he's in this business. No one really knows, but he throws these extravagant parties. So people from all around come to these parties, and people aren't even invited. People just show up, and he's just graciously lets all these people come and have these magnificent parties at his house. So Mr. Carraway, the main character, is telling us about about Jay Gatsby, about Gatsby, the Great Gatsby. And throughout the course of the book, we're told more about Gatsby. It sort of turns out that his real name is James Gatz. Gatz with a Z, not an S. And he was really just like a really poor, destitute person, but he got taken in by a chance encounter with this wealthy man on his yacht, and it made it out like, oh, he inherited his money from this millionaire that he befriended. But no, the millionaire died and didn't leave much to Jay or James. At that point, he changed his name to Jay Gatsby because it sounded more fancy, I guess. And he fought in the war, of course, the First World War, the Great War. Because at the time of the writing, there wasn't a Second World War. And he sort of made it seems like a suicidal run during the war, and managed to be successful in it, and so became a major and won lots of awards, and tried to get back home, but he couldn't. He got stuck and ended up going to Oxford for a bit. So that sort of lends part of his story is that he's an Oxford man. He's educated at Oxford, which makes him sound really fancy and wealthy. But he actually just spent a few months there after the war. And it's never actually revealed how he does get his money, unless I just didn't read between the lines closely enough. But it seems like he was in some serious shady business. He was sort of a bootlegger in that he bought up a whole bunch of drugstores and started selling grain alcohol out of them. Of course, this is during Prohibition era, so it would have made him a lot of money. Which Prohibition era, I need to study up on that because it's so bizarre to me that alcohol is banned, yet any piece of fiction or non-fiction that involves wealthy people at this time, they're always drinking alcohol, like spirits. And I wonder if it's just grain alcohol. Is it just a measure that was put in place to keep the poor people from drinking and to keep them working as like a way to boost production? I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, it seems like Gatsby got in with this guy, this Mayor Wolfstein or something was his name, and he's sort of a swindler, a bad guy, and so whatever Jay Gatsby was involved in, manipulating the stock market or something. It was some sort of fraud that he was in, and he made him his millions. Anyways, so that's part of the story. And that's the who of Gatsby. But the main story revolves around Nick Carraway meeting his friend Tom Buchanan and his wife Daisy Buchanan. He goes to their place, visits them, and they have a friend, Jordan. What's her last name? I can't think of Jordan's last name, but Jordan, this golf player who Nick has a relationship with. And it's interesting, the relationship's really only hinted at because we're told the story from Nick's perspective, and so he doesn't go into detail about it. And in fact, he's very subtle about it. This could also just be because it's written in Edwardian America, if I can say such a thing, in 1925. Anyway, so Jordan and Nick have sort of a relationship. But we're introduced to this Tom Buchanan character, Nick's friend, who is he seems like a not great guy. He says a lot of racist things, like sort of racist conspiracy theories, which were popular in the 1920s, and especially the 30s, and unfortunately are sort of coming back today. Sort of the things your weird uncle would say at Thanksgiving, like how the white races need to stick together because we're being overwhelmed by the other races, and the Nordic race needs to hold on to its superiority. I don't know. Anyways, just makes you feel like Tom's not a great guy. And on top of that, Tom is known to sleep around. He cheats on his wife perpetually, it seems like. They had originally lived in Chicago, but had left out east to New York, and the reason seems to be some major scandal involving Tom and some other woman. It's sort of open knowledge that Tom has a mistress in New York City. And this woman, he takes Nick to meet at one point. Her name's Myrtle Wilson. Myrtle is married to a Mr. Wilson, so she's also married and is cheating on her husband, who is a sort of a meek person who owns a garage, and he's always trying to buy Tom's car because he needs money, and he's pretty destitute and hard up, very, very like lower class. But anyway, so Tom's cheating on Daisy, his wife, with Myrtle Wilson, and he seems fine with it, and I'm not sure why Tom and Daisy are still together, because they really don't like each other. Their relationship's pretty rough. But Tom also like hits Myrtle, so the woman, his mistress that he's cheating with, he like smacks her, breaks her nose at one point because they get into a little argument or something. So like Tom's an awful person. Anyways, so Gatsby. Back to Gatsby. So it turns out Gatsby has been in love with Daisy. Before the war, before she was married to Tom, Gatsby had met her and had fallen in love with her, and has always been trying to get back to her after the war, but hasn't been able to. And so he bought this house, this magnificent mansion, and at the back of the house, there's a beach, and across from the beach is the other island where Tom and Daisy live. And there's this green light on, and that green light to him always represented Daisy. She was out there, but he wouldn't approach her. He was super embarrassed, not embarrassed, but like really shy and really worried. But he finds out that through the mutual friend Jordan, that's how Nick meets Gatsby, and also Nick is Gatsby's neighbor, that Nick knows the Buchanans, knows Daisy. So he tries to get him to set up a meeting with Daisy and Gatsby, which they do. They meet, and it's like super awkward at first, but then they eventually sort of warm to each other, and they're thrown back in time to their youth, and are in love once again. And Gatsby's like, he's a bit of a problematic character also. It's such a great romance because the characters are so real. Gatsby is convinced that Daisy's always loved him. Daisy never loved Tom. And now Daisy's going to go off and live with Gatsby, and they're going to live happily ever after because they're lovers and they've been reunited after all this time. Um, However, it eventually all comes out that um, Daisy has feelings for Gatsby, and Gatsby's in love with Daisy, and her husband Tom is upset about it, and it's a whole big thing. But the sort of tragedy, because this is a tragedy, the tragedy of it all is they go out one day, and for whatever reason, Tom takes Jordan and Nick in Gatsby's car. Gatsby takes Daisy alone in Tom's car, and they go to the city. And then on their way, they have a big conversation, and then Gatsby's like, Daisy never loved you, Tom. She only loves me. She's coming to stay with me now. You two are breaking up. And then Tom's like, what are you talking about? I've been looking into you. You're like really shady. You're a criminal. I don't really trust you. Daisy's totally has loved me. What are you talking about? Daisy, right? You love me. And then Daisy's like, well, actually, yeah, no, I have loved you, but not anymore, Tom. You're an awful person. And Gatsby's like, well, wait, what do you mean you did love him? Like, I thought you only loved me. How can you love more than one person? And she's like, oh, I'm just a girl written by a man in the 1920s. So eventually they leave, Gatsby and Daisy leave in a car, and passing by the Wilsons' garage, Myrtle steps out and recognizes Daisy, who is, of course, the wife of the man she's sleeping with, because she's cheating on her husband with Tom. So she sees Daisy coming and goes and runs out to wave at Daisy. Daisy's driving the car. She's in a right state because of everything that's happened, and she ends up hitting Myrtle, and I believe it's accidentally, hitting Myrtle with her car and killing her. So Myrtle Wilson's dead. Tom's lover is dead at the hands of Daisy, Tom's wife, in her car, accidentally, I believe. And so the rest of the party catch up, and it's slowly revealed that, oh, this was Gatsby's car, and they start to think Gatsby did it as sort of payback at Tom, because this is Tom's lover that he just killed with his car. But Nick goes and talks to Gatsby, and Gatsby's like, look, it was Daisy was driving, but I'll take the fall for it. I'll say I was driving. Like, Daisy's had a rough day. I don't want her upset. Like, I love Daisy, whatever. And so that happens. However, Mr. Wilson, I don't know his first name, Myrtle's husband, the garage keeper, was very distraught that his wife has been hit by a car, and he was planning on leaving because he found out that his wife's been cheating on him. He doesn't know with who. He doesn't know it's Tom, but he knows that his wife is cheating on him, and so they're getting ready to leave town, and she just got killed. So he's like really distraught, and Tom insinuates to Mr. Wilson that, hey, it was Gatsby's car. Although it wasn't actually Gatsby's car. Anyways, he said it was Gatsby that did it. This man Gatsby. He was probably the one sleeping with your wife, even though it was Tom himself. So Mr. Wilson, who's super distraught and distressed, gets a gun, goes all over town trying to find where Gatsby is. He finds Gatsby, goes to Gatsby's house, finds Gatsby in his pool in the back, shoots and kills Gatsby, and then shoots and kills himself. And that's it. Ends with Gatsby's funeral. And after having these lavish parties and this weird relationship with Daisy and Jordan and everything, no one ends up going to his funeral except for his father, who comes from out west, comes to the funeral, but he's not really estranged from his father, but he hasn't seen his father in years, and his father has a photograph that Gatsby sent him, and he's really proud of this photograph, and he's showing off the house in the photograph while they're in the house, and there's like a great line where the photograph to him is more real than the house that they're actually in. So it was basically just Nick and his father and like the servants and butler and this one weird guy from the party that was at the funeral. Daisy and Tom, we never hear from them again. They go off, move away somewhere. and live the rest of their life happily ever after. I assume Tom will continue cheating as profusely as he always did. But there is one moment where Jordan and Nick sort of have a final goodbye, and like admit that like they're breaking up, or they've broken up, or it's over or whatever. And then I think it ends with Nick going back out west. And so yeah, so the whole book was really about, from my understanding, about sort of a longing for a time in the past, a longing for a youth that is gone, for the love and the relationships, and for everything to be as it was. That's what Gatsby wanted. He wanted everything back to the way it was when he was a kid, not a kid, but like young. And now he's 30, or just turned 30, or early 30s, and he's looking back to that time, and he's like, why can't I just make it? And he finds a Daisy, and he admits his love to her and everything, and then he realizes that, or maybe he doesn't realize, but the fact is that things have changed. So many things have changed. Life is so infinitely complex that just getting one thing back is not going to turn back the clock. Like the final line is, Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgiastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning. And so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Oh, no, here it comes. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in the vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. So yeah, so Gatsby was chasing after this thing that was already so far in the past, but he didn't know that. Anyways, so it's just a beautiful story, because it is a love story in a way. Well, not in a way. It is a love story, but a tragic one, and the characters they're real, full, three-dimensional characters, and they have flaws, every single one of them. Even Nick, you could tear apart Nick's character. Nick's the POV character. His relationship with Jordan, I'm sure we could find lots of issues with that, even though he sort of hides it because he's the narrator, but obviously an unreliable one, as he is human, and he is telling a story about himself that he's obviously going to be censoring. Anyways, yeah, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, a classic for a reason. What a wonderful book.